Welcome back, everybody. This is TVJ on another live stream on Monday night. I'm glad to see that you actually there's quite a few of you here tonight. Let's start by checking in on the chat. So we have Eric. Welcome, Eric. We also have Bob, our moderator. Joe with Conjoling is here. And yes, I apologize for the late start. DJ Ware. Hello, everybody. Who else is here? Oh, look, Tony is here. Hi, Tony. Looks like I got quite a few people. YouTube says we have 6 of you, which is awesome. So last week, many of you were here, and you got to witness the what does a TV engineer do? And several of you asked about some remote production. Had some questions about remote production. So I figured let's do a live stream solely on remote television production. And so let's break it down into the 3 basic categories for remote production. We have software or small remote production. We have hardware-based or maybe medium-sized productions. And then we have component or professional, usually it's what's called, large productions. So the 3 different types allow us to break down the kind of gear we're going to use and how many people are required. I have this memo here, which I can't really show you, but basically it's a 9-page rough or remote unit form. And it basically lists down all the people, and what they do for remote production. And this is a large scale production. There are 34 names on the sheet of paper. So 34 people for a remote. You may do a live stream at YouTube or, at your local church and have 1 or 2 people. So that when I talk about the 3 types of productions, the small, medium, and large, that's kind of the scale we're going from 1-person productions maybe to 5 people to 34 and on up. The Super Bowl uses like 200 people just for comparison. So let's get started. I have a little slideshow set up for you, and I took most of these pictures myself. If I didn't take the picture, I grabbed it off of a Facebook page, a public Facebook page. So just so you know where the photos came from. So let's get started. This is what I would call a small hardware-based remote production. This is a Blackmagic ATEM 2ME switcher with a dedicated audio mixer, an intercom box, dedicated hyperdecks, and a multi-viewer. Picture to your left. So, no, it's not Bob Carpenter. Sorry, I was reading the chat message. So again, this is what I would call a small production. This is designed for basically 1 person to run it with maybe some camera operators. This is actually a parade that we do every year. So this is our setup that we use every year at the station. So then we have a small software-based solution or remote. This is vMix on the right. This is a Stream Deck in the middle with for controlling vMix. And on the left-hand side, you have a laptop running production truck, which is the worst name for a piece of software in the history of software. I absolutely can't stand the name. Blue Frame Technologies, if you're watching, please change the name. I beg you. But this is designed for 1 person, again, to run the whole production with a couple camera operators. This is at the university that I work at. We do, live sports almost daily, it seems like. And so this is a small little production that we do. Then we have a different kind of vMix production with a dedicated physical switcher and separate director and replay operator. So this is the director. She runs the production bot controller. It's designed for vMix. And it basically allows you to have a nice keyboard like you would on a Stream Deck, but actually gets feedback. So you can see there in the middle row, you have the red light, which is for what's on program. You have the green light for what's in preview. You have physical buttons you can push to take sources and fade between sources. It's kind of the next level, but it's still a very small production. So the next level, maybe kind of the medium tier, is uses trailers or trucks. Usually trailers, so let's show you one of those. This is a vMix based production trailer, which I actually have a video on my channel. This is basically right after it was built, so we haven't finished it. There's still some things to work on. But here we have dedicated positions for vMix operators. You know, there's an audio operator, again, the Stream Deck for controlling it, and then you have a production truck laptop on the left-hand side for running the score bug. In this production, in the vMix productions, the score bug is generated automatically by the scoreboard communicating with our production truck. So we have automatic score bug generation. And then with vMix, you can bring in videos and other sources like that. And basically, it makes it really easy for one or two people to do a whole production. So this is what I said, go back to that, small scale, software-based productions. I don't want to say entry level, but basically it's kind of like entry level. Low barrier to entry. You just kind of get in and you don't spend a whole lot of money and you have some good stuff and you can do some really cool, complicated stuff, but there's no redundancy. There's no ability to have multiple operators performing those functions. It's just kind of limited. So then what's the next level? Well, this is another trailer, only this actually has more component-based or professional-grade gear in it. So what do you get at this level? This is kind of the small to medium-sized remote productions. Here, you have an actual trailer with 2 air conditioning units. This particular trailer has storage, which I think is amazing. This is where the camera gear goes and the tripods go and all the, some of the cables go. And it's just right there in front, and it's nice and easy to get to. And when you're doing a production day in and day out, this is the kind of thing you really want, is that ability to just get up and go and not need a lot of setup. So on the side of this truck, or a trailer I should say, is an I/O panel, or inputs and outputs. Here's where the cameras plug in. Those are the red cables. You have B and C jacks for video, XLR cables for audio. You have some LCD monitors there for, technical, what are we doing kind of thing. Q and, quality control. Can you run up and see, does this cable work? You can plug in and make it really nice. This is the back of the trailer. In this kind of setup, you kind of bring your own power. So they actually bring a generator and stow it in the back. And then there you see those red heavy-duty either fiber or coax cable, Triax cables. I think this is Triax, I believe. Yeah, it's Triax. So you have some heavy cables and then whatnot. And then you see the racks there. And in the next picture, I actually have a close-up shot of those racks. Here you can see all the different components. Again, this is a small to medium-sized production, but we're to the component level. So therefore, there's a dedicated switcher, a dedicated audio board, dedicated graphics and replay, and there's outboard gear, which I'll show you in the next picture, for converting video and whatnot. So you have the ability to basically have component level productions at a small scale. And so what I like to do, what I should probably point out is that at component level, productions, professional productions, you don't have one point of failure. So in vMix, if your computer dies, your production's dead. You don't have a production. In this level of production, if your graphics machine dies, you can still do a broadcast. If you have a camera die or a replay machine die, you can still do a broadcast. So it basically breaks everything out into components, which gives you a better level of redundancy and professionalism, because now you have dedicated operators running 1 or 2 machines instead of one person running everything. In the chat, we have a question from Joe about what is Triax. Triax is a coax-based cable that is designed to send video, data, and power all down one cable. So the communication mechanism is sending video and even intercom back and forth down one coax cable, and then the cable is also delivering power to the camera itself. There also is fiber-based cable, which is basically the same thing, only over fiber, two different fibers. So one's coax, which is Triax, and then you have fiber-based, SEMTI, as they call it, cables. So hopefully that answers your question. In this case, the level of redundancy I'm talking about basically is you have a dedicated switcher with redundant power supplies, an audio board, replay machines and graphics machines that also have redundant power supplies, but then you may also have a backup video router, like a video hub or some sort of router that if your switcher dies, you could then still use to switch. It wouldn't be very clean or pretty, but you could technically do it. Or you might have a mixer that can actually handle audio as well. So if your audio board were to die, the mixer itself, switcher I should say, could actually handle that audio. And, you know, in a basic level. So you kind of break it out more, and that's why I say it has more redundancy, because you actually break it out in individual components with redundant power supplies. So you kind of get some more flexibility in terms of powering off maybe a UPS or a generator and then having one off a different source. And again, when I get to the higher level productions, that becomes more apparent. Bob Carpenter asks, how much power each of these builds require, including AC? These trailers don't require that much. I don't know the actual power needs, but I feel like on a small trailer, it's probably two 30 amp circuits, two 50 amp circuits maybe. On the bigger trailer, yes, they require 208, 200 amps sometimes. I actually have a spec sheet somewhere. I pull that up real quick. I could tell you on the big trucks, the power requirements are 3-phase, up to 280 volts at 200 amps per leg. So that's a big semi-truck, and we'll get there in terms of the pictures. But basically, yeah, for a full semi-truck, it requires 200 amps per leg of 3-phase. So Joe asked, what is a malt cable? Is it multi? It basically is, if I go back to the picture, you can see on here the blue cable coming in is a malt cable, and it has multiple XLR connectors or maybe multiple audio and video in one bundled cable. And that makes it a lot easier to pull cable around when you can just pull one big cable, and at the end it breaks out into maybe 2 video and 3 XLR, or in this case I think it's all audio, so I think it's probably 8 audios, and you probably have 4 female and 4 male, or maybe 6 and 2 that you can go back and forth with. And in some of the later examples I'll show you what that actually does or how it's used. But that's a good question. Let's turn off chat and let's resume the little slideshow I have set up. Again, this is the back of the trailer, and there's the racks. So this is the front of the racks. This is what the director sees. They have 2 big monitors for preview and program, and then they have up top in the left-hand corner, you see individual monitors for graphics or cameras. Down below, you have the camera control units, and then, you know, on the right is the graphics person. Joe says, you know a lot about this stuff, you should do it for a living. That's funny, Joe. I actually, you know, do that. That's a good one. That's why I want to do these live streams, because honestly, most people don't know what it takes. They just turn the TV on and they see a game start, you know, and they don't know what it takes. They don't know that, you know, there's a 9-page memo with containing who does what and when they arrive, and an example, you know, for example, this is the first page is basically got who's does what for the main leaders of the company. Here's the crew list again with the 34 names. They has their name and their role, their phone numbers, what time they get there, where they're staying or how they're getting there. Are they traveling? Are they driving in? Are they a local person? And then you have things like the schedule, which basically says, you know, when to arrive, what happens, who does what, when. And in this case, there's a preset schedule, so there's a set day where they plug everything in and make sure it works, and they have a game day. Those are 2 different days, so there's 2 different schedules. Here, you know, maybe as a camera guide for basically, where each camera goes, what it's called, what kind of camera it is. In this case, it says, the left 25 yard line, section 411. It's CCU or camera unit 1. There's even a map of where things go. And again, I don't want to show you up close, so I'm just kind of keeping it generic. Then it shows you the video pass, the audio pass, transmission information. So a lot goes into a remote broadcast that starts days, if not weeks or months. For example, the Super Bowl, Fox knows they're going to have the next Super Bowl, so they start planning it basically as soon as the last Super Bowl starts, they start planning the next one. Not every production is done that way. When I've done these events, I basically get asked maybe a month or two out, hey, can you go here in next month? Or can you come out, in 2 months even, for, if you got to book travel and whatnot. And a lot of these remotes require you to travel, if not everyone's located in a big city where the remotes are. So there's a lot of planning involved and a lot of thought goes into remote production, and they put together these lists and they get these sent out and they may get revised 3 times and who knows what. So let's go back to the chat. You guys actually have some questions. Rebecca says, in DC, there's agreement who runs the malt box of the split. Everyone pulled. Yeah. What she's referring to basically is there's a split box or a malt box, they sometimes call it, where basically there's a press conference. And so one microphone or one audio feed comes into a malt box or split box. And then each station runs their cable up to that and plugs it in. So that not everyone is running their own microphone or their own audio feed from the source. I think that's what you're referring to, Rebecca. Eric says, yeah, those NASCAR races, yeah, it's magic how all the in-car cameras work and everything just works. It's magic. And in a lot of situations like those, for NASCAR or whatever it is, you have the same crew each time. So you might have the same TD, you might have the same audio person, you may have the same camera people every week. So when they go to a new event, a new racetrack, they're not guessing at what they're doing or where they're going. They just need to go pull up. They know where they're going to sit. They know what gear they're using. They just plug it in and make it work. And then the setup time is a lot less because they've already known, hey, I do the same thing every week. Yeah, for press conferences, a malt box, they call them, or split box, or DA box, whatever you want to call them. Hi, David. I don't know if I've seen you before here. Welcome to my channel. What do you think about Formula One approach to broadcast? Yeah, that's called, here in the US, we call it REMI, or Remote Integrated Broadcast. I forget. But basically, what he's talking about, what Formula One apparently does, is all the signals are generated on the track or at a venue, and they're piped back via fiber or some sort of transmission mechanism to a central office where they then get combined. What that does is that generates a lot less traffic for people, or travel, I should say. So instead of flying out everybody to the venue and paying for 20 or 30 flights and hotel rooms and whatnot, those people can stay in their hometowns or LA or New York, it's usually where they are, and they don't have to travel. So you travel the minimal amount of people to an event, like the camera operators, some audio people, engineers. They plug it all in and send it back, to a home office where then it gets switched, mixed, replays done, and graphics are added. It's a way to save money. Honestly, it's all what it's about, because then people don't have to travel. It also offers you some people redundancy because in that example of Formula One or NASCAR or whatever it is, if you have a TD who maybe gets sick, but there's another TD who already who can cover for them, that already lives in the city. Now you have people redundancy, and I get it. It's a thing. It's a way to save money. I personally don't like it, but I understand it, and it's just a reality. And I think in a lot of cases there are productions that wouldn't get done if it wasn't for a REMI setup where you can save some money because not everyone wants to travel to a lacrosse game or whatever in in Wisconsin. And therefore, if you can send less people on site and the people can stay home, now that event can get broadcast, and now the broadcaster saves money, the event gets covered, the athletes are on TV, everyone wins. Joaz says, I see those screens that show the video signal, but it's a blob. Oh, oscilloscope, yeah. Who reads them and how? The question got cut off. Usually the director in a trailer based production. It's usually the director. In a higher end production, it's the video operators. And you'll see those in photos later on. Definitely a thing that people still do use and read. Bob says TD is technical. Yeah, sorry, Bob. I speak this language all day long, so for me it's kind of hard to always break it down. But yes, technical director. That person pushes buttons. We'll get to them in a little bit. But yes, you are correct. Tommy says hi. Hi, Tommy. Welcome back. So I'm now caught up with chat. So let's resume my presentation, if you will. Kind of feel like Tony teaching a class. So you have, in this case, again, this is a trailer production. For those of you who just joined, this is a small trailer-based production with, dedicated monitors for things. It's kind of a smaller, lower budget. I mean, and when I say low, that's a relative figure. It's probably a $200,000 trailer, maybe more, probably $300,000 actually. I priced one of these a while ago. It's expensive. The biggest cost actually is the cameras, because the camera lenses to shoot sports are probably the most expensive single item you're gonna buy, because you need 3 or 4 of them, maybe more, and they're $20,000 or $30,000 a piece. So your cameras are actually your expensive part of these trailers. So, and this is to the right of that previous picture. Here you can see in the upper left-hand corner the camera control units. You have some patch bays, some other gear, some FS1s or FS2s as from a company called Aja. There you see the 3-play replay machine, and then down below, out of frame, is where that person is sitting. That's the graphics operator. So in this trailer, you have director on the left, graphics on the right, and in the back, you have a replay / audio operator. So you have 3 operators. So we went from a small vMix software-based 1 operator or 2 people to now a hardware-based medium, small to medium, 3 production-based 3-person production. And then you can move up from here into your medium productions. This is I want to say 35-foot truck, dedicated production truck. All it does is productions. This production truck has 3 rooms with 2 doors. So in this photo on the right-hand side where that guy is, that's the production room. In the middle behind the light pole is actually the audio room, which in this event is what I was actually running, was the audio. And in the back you have another door with the replay room and engineering. Here's another form of medium production truck. This is from a company called Rush. It's the gray unit on the left-hand side. It's got 2 doors again. In this case, it actually expands out. So the truck has a little expansion bay where it bumps out, and that's where actually the graphics people sit. So it bumps out to give them room to sit. In that back door, again, is replay and engineering. In the right-hand door, the front door, is where your audio sits, and then that leads into the control room. I don't have any pictures of this truck. It's actually kind of a cool truck for being small. It actually holds a lot of room. On the left-hand side of the back of the truck, you see 2 giant air conditioning units. All this stuff makes heat and consumes power, and it requires air conditioning to cool it, which requires more power. So now we're probably up to 100 amps per phase, maybe, or 100 amps, total, and go from there. Yeah, Tommy, I think it is actually a Girling truck. I believe Girling has a video. Girling and Associates is a production truck company, or a truck manufacturing company out of Sunbury, Ohio. Sunbury, yeah, it's based outside of Columbus, and they build a lot of these production trucks. They have a Vimeo account where you can go on their website or on the video and watch like walkthroughs of trucks that are empty. I would definitely suggest, if you're interested in that, to go check that out. Again, it's Girling and Associates is the Sunbury. Yeah, okay. Tommy says Sunbury, Ohio. I always forget where they're located. Um, but I definitely encourage you to go visit them if you're interested in that kind of stuff. So now we're on to the large productions. This is an A unit, which is basically where all the production people sit. This is, in this particular example, SS28 from a company called NEP. There's about there's like two big truck companies and a couple smaller ones. NEP is the biggest in terms of people and size. Game Creek is another one out there. They have like the bigger contracts typically, but they both are just massive truck companies. Yeah, Bob has the website there. Thank you, Bob. So this is the A unit. This is a full 53-foot long semi-truck trailer. And then it has a B unit, but this is the B unit. And here you see again those giant air conditioners, multiple doors, multiple I/O panels. And then here's another example where you have an A unit on the right and the B unit on the left. And this picture always makes me laugh because if you look on the ground, you can actually see lines where the trucks are supposed to park. This is at a Detroit Tigers Stadium. This is basically always have trucks here. They always have trucks in this location, so they mark where you should park. And here are, an A unit and a B unit again for a baseball game. And in this particular example, that back door that you see up on the first truck is where audio is. The door on the right leads into a production control room, which I will actually show you later. The B unit on the left-hand side has actually got more storage space in it for carrying cameras and gears. But it has some room too for operators. And then you get to what I consider ultra large or mega size productions. So they're not really a classification of their own. But here you see Game Creek, and there are 5 trucks, and I believe this is Super Bowl 53. It's a Super Bowl picture. Again, I didn't take this photo, but I found it on Facebook. But I just thought it was cool. Here you can see the 5 trucks that they use, and I believe one of these trucks is just for replay, and I believe one is for graphics, if I'm not mistaken. So here you basically have individual trucks doing individual things. So you have one truck that does replay. You have one truck that maybe does graphics. You have, audio in one truck and video in another and production in another. I mean, it gets kind of crazy at this level. And I actually worked on a production, the NBA All-Star game this year, where basically there were lots of trucks, I think, and I'll show you those pictures later. But I mean, it gets kind of crazy at these productions, and I mean, I quickly feel out of place because it's like, oh my God, what is going on? There's so much happening. It's just insane. So yeah, and power is a big thing. Tommy says 5 trucks. Look at all that power. Yeah, they bring their own generators, and I have pictures of this later. Again, I'll show you. Tony says absolutely amazing. Eric says it looks like a NASA mission control. Yeah, and again, I have pictures of that. So let's keep going forward. So here is the ultimate production. Basically, this is, I think, at the Masters. This was some golf tournament. I can't even count all the trucks that are in this picture. Can I zoom in a little bit? Yeah, I could zoom in. So basically, you could see how there's just truck after truck after truck. On the left-hand side, you see NEP trucks. On the right-hand side, you see NEP. I think it's Bexel. BXL is a sports production company that helps do some like RF-related stuff. Towards the bottom here, you have a truck with a salad dish on it. To the right side, you see more trucks with salad dishes. I mean, this is just, again, one of those big productions that just blows your mind sometimes. So, what's in a production truck? I mean, I've shown you pictures of the outside, I've shown you pictures of inside stuff, but let's look at actually what a production truck really is. Here's a production truck. This happens to be one of the venues or one of the remotes that I worked on. Here is basically it parking, and you see it's just flat. There's no expanding side, but yet these trucks have expanding sides. So how does that work? Well, when the truck parks, you get underneath it and you crank out the side with a little ratchet kind of thing, and you literally crank it. You got to turn it probably 50 or 60 times for that side to slide out. And God help you if it's got ice on it or it's jammed up, because it's not fun, because it's a hand crank. I mean, you're hand crank. There's some pulleys to help it push it out, but basically you're hand cranking that thing out. It's not automatic. And so then once that side pops out, here's what it looks like underneath. You don't have a floor. The floor is actually on the right hand side where those numbers are. So you see section 3 and 4. Those actually fall down, or not fall down, but fold down and make the floor. And then because space is at a premium, you can see how up top on the left hand side, those whole shelf, those whole, like basically their desk slide in. And in the next picture, I'll show you how they're slid back out and that you actually have space to walk around. So this is kind of cool, because this is basically what it looks like when you first fold it out, and there you see that ratchet thing. And then here is basically the same picture, or a picture taken from the same location where I was just standing, only here you can see the floors down, the desk slid out, chairs are brought in. In this case, it was February, so it was cold, so we had heaters trying to warm the truck up, because you can't just turn the truck on. It's freezing cold. You have to warm the truck up a little bit. As you see, there's no power on anything yet. It's just lights and heaters. And again, everything's come with it. So all this stuff had to be put in a certain place and packed in a certain way so that it could go down the road and yet all get out and not need another vehicle. Because that's one thing I should point out, is that the smaller productions or the medium productions, you may have a second vehicle that has to come with the truck because due to weight or storage space. You don't have the ability on a smaller truck or a medium truck to carry everything. These 53-foot long production trucks carry everything they need. There's no other vehicles. When it arrives, it has everything it needs, which is why sometimes there's two of them. Joe says that on the bigger crews, they have a truck. I hear the bigger crews have a truck that's just a cafeteria. Yeah, it's not a truck. It's usually just like a construction trailer they bring in from a local construction crew or wherever. But it's not usually a dedicated truck. It's usually a dedicated trailer. But yes, there is definitely cafeterias. So yeah, Joe says talking about the cafeteria for the crew. Yeah, so basically that definitely is a thing. Not trucks usually, they're trailers. So, speaking of bringing stuff with you, here's what it looks like underneath the trucks. Now, these are bays. They basically fold out and they have all the storage gear. In this case, looks like they're mostly camera cases, tripods, maybe some audio gear. Who knows what's in those bags? But basically, the trucks underneath have storage bays. And one of the jobs that I've done is what we call E2, or engineering assistant, as I like to call them. And the E2's job is to unload and load that trailer. And because it has to go back in the particular way, it can't go back in any random way or it won't fit, because there's no space left. When they pack these things for the shows, it gets packed a certain way, and it's got to get unpacked and then put back in that same way. And if you actually look up top, you'll see some green labels that probably indicate what goes in those particular rows or whatever. And the truck that I've worked on before, they're printed labels with pictures, and they literally will say, camera 1's CCU goes like this, camera 2's tripod goes in like this, and it's a little picture and it shows you exactly where it goes. And so the first thing you do when you get on location is, basically is with your cell phone, you take a picture of that label and you kind of memorize it, and then you take a picture of the gear so that you can remember exactly how it goes in, because the cases are color coded, so that'll help you load them up. It'll show you some cases are big, small, they have to fit in a certain way. So you basically take pictures of what it looks like so that when you unpack it, give it to the people to go use, and they bring it back to you, and you check it all in, that you can put it in the truck, basically the right direction. So Joe asked, is there a list? What is in every case? Yes. Basically, most people know what goes in the cases. They're pretty consistent. But a lot of people will actually put on the outside, or in the inside, I should say, of the lid, you know, one viewfinder, one pan control, one zoom control, so on and so forth. And then the bays, like I was saying, have they have a list of what cases go in each bay. So you have a list for the bays and then a list of each case. Make sure it doesn't look like... That's me with my wife. It's not Bob Carpenter. And yeah, Tommy, that's the thing, is that at the end of the night, after you worked a 10-hour day or 12-hour day, the camera crews bring the gear back to you. They hand it to you. You check it in, and basically, does it have everything it needs? If it does, great. You close it up and you put it in the bay. But because you can't just throw it in the bay willy-nilly, you got to have a list or document that says how to pack the bay. And Bob says it's not his photo, which, yes, we just saw that. So let's go back to the slideshow. I hope you all are enjoying this. I hope it makes sense. Again, if there's any questions, please comment down below. I love the viewer engagement. We currently have 10 viewers. We also only have 6 likes, so if you could give it a like, I'd appreciate it. I know every YouTuber says that, but it does help the algorithm. So then here we have a picture of the cables, and here you can see, although not very well, but here you can see a picture of the camera cables at the ends. It's a heavy-duty connector. Again, I think these are Triax cables. And then here up top, you can see the lighter fiber cables. And then you have yellow, which is probably either Malt Cables or power cables. Probably Malt fiber if I had to guess. But yeah, so this is what the bays look like with cables. And here's what a bay looks like empty. And here you can see on the far side what I was saying, the document before, of basically how they're laid out. You know, put this case in first, then this case, then that case, and then, you know, the middle row is this case and that case, and so on and so forth. So that's what I said with the labels. And so this is an empty case. There's a lot of space. You could crawl in there and sleep. I mean, these are big bays, and this is all underneath where people operate and work. There's some questions. Let's continue. What typically is the heaviest box? The lens is probably the heaviest box. The cables are all just thrown in, like the previous picture. They're just kind of thrown in there, coiled up. So the cables are usually the heaviest, especially the power cables. But the heaviest box itself is probably the camera lens. And I have a picture of a lens later on that you'll see why it's probably the heaviest thing. Yes, I can't wait to hit 1,000 subs either. I'm almost there. I think I have 550, 560. So I'm getting there. Tommy says he seems to get fired. Yes. And getting fired for moats, that's a whole other thing. But basically, yes, people can get fired. I mean, that's the number one sign of two people that you don't know how to do at your job, is basically if you're coiling around your arm. Never coil cables around an arm. I mean, it's bad. It's just, don't do it. Maybe I should do a video on how to coil a cable. That'd be a good topic. Oops, let's remove chat. So also in those bays that I was talking about are the video I/O panels. Now we saw one earlier that had a couple connectors. Here's one that has, you know, much more in terms of video connectors. This is a bunch of BNC jacks. You have telephone jacks, network jacks. In the bottom left-hand corner, you have what we call DT12s, which are actually 12 audio cables in one connector. Those things are heavy, awkward, and just complicated, but man, they make things so much easier in terms of plugging things in, because you have one connector with 12 XLR cables in one. So this is just a picture of a truck that I've seen. It is all kinds of video in and outputs. Here is another photo of the same truck taken to the right. And here you have, again, all kinds of BNC video jacks. You have fiber. In the bottom corner here, in the bottom of the middle screen where those red cables are, you have the red Triax connectors. That's that coax cable. And so then you also have to the right SEMTI. So some stadiums are wired for Triax, some are wired for SEMTI. This truck has the ability to do both. And in this particular example, they were intermixing. They have 3 cameras that are Triax based. They have two cameras that were SEMTI based. Actually, there was 3. So you have 3 and 3 in this example. And they have all kinds of video inputs, outputs, XLRs, you name it, they have it. This is actually from a company called IMS in Indianapolis. They do Indy races. They're owned by Indianapolis Motor Speedway, hence IMS. And they were actually doing a football game this day. And I've never seen a truck with this much I/O on it. Usually they don't have this much, but this truck is designed to do all kinds of cool stuff. And I wish I would have included a picture, but basically this truck has wood floors inside. Well, they're vinyl, but they look like they're wood floors. Like, it's very fancy. So speaking of I/O panels, this is a picture of another truck that I saw, where this was basically a bunch of interconnections with other trucks, and here they have fiber, coax, XLR. Those big cables in the ground look like they're DT12s. On the left-hand side here, all this black cable looks like it's Malt Cables. I think I have a picture of that next. Yep, I do. So here you see all kinds of BNC Malt cable, because Malt cable can be, again, multiple video cables, multiple audio, mixes, depends on what it is. This is just cable after cable. And here, you can kind of see, although it's upside down, they label everything. Where the cable goes, what it's for, because it's a complicated mess, and this is why they have set days, or in the event that I worked back in February, we had 4 days of setup because this was this event. This is not our truck, but this is the event I was at, and here they just have lots and lots of cables connecting each other. I don't even know what's on these feeds. It could be anything. I will tell you, in this particular example, the black cables on the left-hand side, those are part of the, what do they call it? But it's some system, basically, that allows all the trucks to talk to each other. So they run these big cables back and forth between the trucks, and then when they turn the trucks on, they just all talk to each other. So that's kind of the inter-truck communication. Then you have the stuff on the right, which is basically to other trucks from different vendors or different venues. So let's go back to the chat real quick, make sure I don't get too far behind. Tommy says, yes, I should do an over-under video. I should definitely do that. No comment, Joe. Yes, lots of I/O. Yeah, Eric, that last truck was very interesting. I've never seen one before like that. I've never seen one like that before, so that's why I took that picture. DJ Wares says he feels better after seeing those cable connections. Yeah. The one thing you got to remember, though, this is all temporary. This could be set up in a couple days, the event happens, and then they tear down and go home. So this is all temporary. So while, it may look like a mess, it's temporary. And even there, you can see things are labeled. Things are held up with, bungee cords or whatever for stress relief. They're still taking care to take care of those cables. It's just not pretty, So Bob asks, you've had 4,000 cables and one is bad. Well, how do you find it? Well, hopefully you've labeled your Malt cable, or hopefully you've labeled your stuff, and then you probably know based on the Excel sheet that you've made where things are plugged in. So if one signal doesn't work, you kind of know where to start at least. And then basically if you have, in this example, they're probably not using every one of those cables, so you could just try a different color. And it's temporary, and you move on. It's not like it's perfect in any way, shape, or form. So I have a couple more photos of the bays, I believe. Let's try the next photo. So here's a close-up picture of a fiber patch panel. This is all ST-based fiber, and it's just all video for fiber transmission of video. On the right-hand side, you see a bunch of network patch panels, including one that's kind of fallen out. That could be for KVMs, that could be for networking, that could be for phone lines, that could be for tally or serial control. And these trucks, they use RJ45s for lots of things. And they all come to a patch panel like this, so they could patch any jack to be anything. So, for example, let's say a producer walks in and they want a laptop at their station inside the truck, and they want it connected to the internet. You can simply go into the patch panel and patch a network port into the port at their desk, and they can plug in. Let's say the next show, somebody walks up and they want to run the score bug from that location, and the score bug needs a scoreboard data. So by having it all patchable, it makes it so that each desk is flexible in terms of what it can be used for. So maybe it's a network drop on this show, the next show it's a serial port, maybe the next show it's tally or intercom. You can even do audio across Cat5 or RJ45 connectors. You can run audio across it. So everything is flexible. That these trucks are designed for maximum flexibility. And then here's just a picture that drives me crazy because it's insane. But that's how much fiber they had to run for these shows to make this work, and it just kind of makes me laugh. So if we go to the chat, Bob says, yeah, there are definitely unused connectors in every bundle. I don't think they're using the entire bundle. If they do, they probably run a second bundle. I mean, they're always planning for dead connectors because it happens. Joe says, could you explain SMPTE? Yeah, I could probably find you a picture. Yeah, so here you go, Joe. So this is what a SMPTE fiber connector looks like. It's got two fiber cables, I think 2 copper cables, and then the outer shield is for power, I believe. And the fibers are one in each direction. So the video signal and data flows, down one fiber. The video path or video return lines, maybe the intercom comes back the other fiber. And so you have SMPTE-based fiber, which I believe can do, the higher quality, like 1080, 4K type stuff. And I think the Triax can do 1080 as well, but I don't know that it can do 4K. I'm not actually an expert on that. But basically, here's when I say SMPTE fiber, this is what I'm referring to. And more people are going to SMPTE fiber over Triax, because Triax is heavy, first of all. And but then you also have the ability to repair Triax in the field, where I don't think you're repairing SMPTE fiber in the field for sure. I mean, I guess you could if you're really good, but I don't think you are. So hopefully that answers your question, Joe. Yeah, Bob, basically, yeah. Can you move the yellow connection? Yeah, like I said, everything's labeled for a reason, and they did 4 days of setup before they started going live in this case to make sure everything was correct. Eric says, seeing the big fiber panel bays makes me think there's one tech who has to sit on the short roller chair and, yeah, they do. The engineers, on that little red chair sit underneath there and are patching stuff and connecting stuff, and they're constantly down there rolling back and forth to connect, make sure things are working. I believe this truck had, I want to say this truck had 3 engineers. Usually the trucks only have 2, but this truck I think had 3 or 4 based on what I was seeing. Because in this example, although you can't really see very well, on the left-hand side, there's a table and more cables, and there's a table in the back with more cables. They actually had tables set up on the left-hand side with gear that was interfaced to the truck. So they had stuff sitting outside that plugged in via these cables. Actually, Joe, I'm going to get there in a second. I actually have a picture of something I will show you that might answer your question. SMPTE is a standard. It's a group, and so in this case, SMPTE refers to SMPTE fiber. It's shorthand. I don't know what the actual fiber standard is, but basically it's SMPTE fiber is what they call it. But SMPTE is the Society of Motion Pictures and Television Engineers, I think. I don't remember exactly what it stands for, but it's a standards body, and they made a new standard for connecting cameras. During the production, Joe, hold on, where's the jacket? During the production, the E2 is kind of just sitting there waiting for something to happen. In both of my times when I was in E2, during the production, I didn't do a whole lot. I basically sat there and watched the production, waited for something to happen or something to do. Because in theory, you've already tested things, you've already made sure it works, you have backup procedures or plans if something doesn't go right. Hopefully everything goes right. But basically, there's nothing to do during the production. At least there shouldn't be. I should say that. There shouldn't be anything to do during the production. So as an E2, your work is mostly before and after, just like an E1. During the production, the audio operators and graphics people are busy. The engineers, not so much, at least in theory. That's the hope. So, oops, remove the chat. Again, here's a picture of fiber, and I took this picture, I included this picture because here you can see the black boxes in the center. They're actually converting one type of connector to regular fiber connectors, and I'll show you why they do that in a little bit. But basically, I wanted to show this picture to show those connectors where they can move. And so Joe asked, have you ever sent feeds to AWS Elemental? No, I have not done that service. We use the Elemental encoders at work, but I haven't actually sent video to AWS. And yes, I am trying to noise gate. It's hot in here, so I have a fan running, so I was hoping the noise gate would eliminate that. Tell me if I did a good job or not. Hopefully I did. Here's some more of those connector fibers, and I wanted to show these on the right-hand side. I think you can see some of these cables are just kind of hanging there free. Bob, like we were talking about earlier, you know, you have the one or two extras here, and then maybe you have some spare cables over here that aren't plugged in. And again, everything's labeled. Here's an example of somebody who had a lot of time in their hand and made it look very, very pretty. This is why I include this picture. It was on Facebook years ago. Somebody spent some serious time to make sure that there was no stress on the cables, that things were laid out well, and that they could remove any one of them if they wanted to. I don't know the story behind this, but I just thought it was impressive, so I wanted to include it of some of the best audio, or some of the best cable running I've seen. And I wanted to point out the blue little pool noodles. They buy pool noodles and split them because this is a metal rail on here as part of that Expando unit. And twice while in Cleveland for the NBA All-Star game, I hit my head because I'm not used to walking around in any trucks. I hit my head on it twice, and I bled both times for about a half hour. It was pretty bad because that's a very sharp edge, and we did not have the pool noodles on anything. So I appreciate these pool noodles more than you will know. So if we go back to the chat, Eric says, so pretty. Tony says, wire management. Yeah, Tony, was that you running those cables? Yes, David, it was all coax for many, many years. Fiber is a newer thing. I mean, I say new, but it's newer. it's made a huge difference in terms of the cables. I mean, you can coil a fiber cable and carry it around like no big deal. To coil a coax cable, that's a very strong person who can do that and carry it around. So fiber's made things so much easier. It's a little bit more annoying to deal with fiber cables because they get dirty. So you kind of have to pay more attention when you plug things in and unplug things. But in terms of the weight, fiber cables are amazing, and the fact that you can combine multiple signals onto a fiber cable makes it even better and more useful than the coax signals. So yeah, this is definitely all coax in this truck, or in this photo, I should say. Yeah, Bob, I never thought about that, but yeah, they use the step ladders. What if you needed to use them? Yep, very interesting. Yeah, Joe, I'm 6'4", but yeah, I get your point. Yeah, I definitely should mention that I'm not a short person, so crawling around underneath the trucks was definitely not fun when you're 6'4". And I do applaud the people who made this photo or who made this thing happen. That took thought and planning before they ran a single cable. That is for sure. So let's go back. Currently have 10 viewers and 10 likes. Thank you very much for clicking on the like button. I do appreciate it. So now that you've seen the cables, how do you run the cables? Well, in this example, we're on the fourth floor, fifth floor. The cables come out of the venue, and they drop down 5 floors, and they're tied off with rope. And in this case, they go out a door to the truck. So this is where fiber versus coax is very handy, because fiber is light and can do this. Coax, you risk that thing falling or hitting somebody. Also, here's another example of fiber and cable runs. You can see it hanging off that parking garage from, beam to beam. It goes a long way. I don't even remember how far this was, but it was a long way from where the trucks were parked into the venue. I mean, I'm guessing probably several hundred, probably almost 1,000 feet, if not more, probably several thousand feet, to go from where the trucks are parked into the venue. Coax is not going to go that distance. So I believe these are all fiber lines running up from the venue along this parking garage, and then it crossed this truss bridge that was built over the road. So you went on a truss bridge, then you came off the side of the parking garage, like this photo. Again, across the truss bridge, and then into this room, where basically it was all the fibers that went into the venue came into this little trailer, and then all the fibers from those trucks, those previous photos that I showed you, came here and were patched into the fibers that went into the venue. So one company or one group of people ran the fibers in the venue, and then one group of people ran the fibers from the trucks to this room. So there were two groups of people involved to run fibers from the truck compound all the way in to the venue. And this is why I say, this event had to have hundreds of people, hundreds, if not 1,000 people involved to make this all work, because you had people running fiber and running, network cables. And in this venue, when we were doing this remote, there was 3 guys who were in charge of running the internet connections to people. That's all they did. They ran telephone lines and internet connections. That was their whole job for the whole week, was just to make sure that everybody had phone and internet. And then there was these guys who did the fiber, and there were other guys who did other things. So, and this is what I said, a large production in terms of that planning and redundancy. They've thought this through. They've planned for things. They've accounted for things. Like, there's definitely forethought in terms of the planning. And you can see in this picture, there are unused fibers. And I bet they are unused because they wanted redundancy. So let's go back to the chat real quick. Tommy says the cable run is insane. Yep, when we showed up Monday morning at 9 a.m., all that was already in place, and the event wasn't until Friday. Or sorry, the first event wasn't until Friday. The second event was on Saturday. So there was no events until, no, I take it back. The first event was Thursday. So we showed up Monday. The first event was Thursday night. There was Friday night and Saturday night. But that stuff was all run before we even got there on Monday morning. And I was told that the first trucks went in on Saturday and they didn't pull out until the following Monday. So they were there for almost, I think, 10 days. Bob says all temporary, including the truss bridge. Yep. And yes, the show in these cases must go on. Tony says, amazing how it comes together. We have issues with, yeah, I mean, these guys do it every day, and they give a lot of time to make sure that everything comes together. Yep, canned air. I'm guessing to clean out the connectors. I'm guessing. Oh, I just had a story I was going to tell you, but I forgot what it was. Crap. I'll remember it. Anyway, let's go on. I do appreciate the questions and comments. I love the interaction. I appreciate each and every one of you for being here. I'm currently at 10 viewers and 10 likes, so I do appreciate that. So what's next? So, Joe, you were asking earlier about what do you connect to. So this is an example of a venue patch panel. So the truck parks outside, they run the cables to the venue patch panel, and this is what's already in place in the venue. So instead of running cables all the way into a venue, we only run the cables from the truck to this panel and then patch in. So in this example, on the left-hand side, there's a bunch of network drops for phones and internet cables. In the second row, there's a bunch of there's a DT12 connector, and then it looks like BNC and audio cables. I believe each of those are positions within the baseball field for live shots or locations for reporters. So example, the outfield center, outfield left, first base, third base, coach's box. Each one of those panels is a different location in the baseball field where you could plug in and send video or audio for a reporter or whatever. And the second row is more of the same, the third row is more of the same locations for places. In the far right, or the fourth row, you see a bunch of Triax connectors for cameras. So those are all the camera locations, again, third base, first base, outfield, all that stuff. And then down below in the right-hand corner is more BNC jacks for things like the in-house video feed, or if we're going to send our replay machines back in-house, because a lot of times the replay that the referees use is actually coming from the truck. So the trucks are responsible for replay sometimes. And they have to send the video feeds of the replay machines back in-house. So the cameras come out to the truck, get recorded in the replay machine, and then the video feeds go back inside. So then you have two different cables to run. You have the camera Triax cable you got to run, and then you got a video or BNC cable to go back inside for each camera. So there's a lot of cables to run. But these I/O panels, these patch panels that are for the venues, make it so much easier to plug in because, we were there this day. Well, then we might leave, and the next day, a different truck comes in because a different team is playing, and so therefore the turnaround time could be in hours. I mean, it could be so much so that the truck is literally waiting to, the new truck is waiting for us to pull out of its, location before it can pull in. That could be how fast turnaround time could be on some of these games. So by having these I/O panels where you can just run up, plug in, do the game, and unplug and run out, makes it so much easier, both for the setup crew, the production crew, the venue itself. It just makes it so much easier. So Joe, you were asking about internet connections. Well, here's one of the things that basically is in that rack room where I was just showing you. And here you have a bunch of video feeds going in and out. And there you have 80 by 80 on one of those cards, not being used. But then you have video access modules. So there you have 4 feeds coming in, 4 feeds going out. Then you have, you know, network cables if you wanted to do it, sync, more video modules, and then you have your fiber feed up front. Oh, there you go. So that's OC, I'm guessing OC13 or OC192, STM64. I don't know what those speeds are. I'm sure Bob Carpenter is quickly Wikipediaing that, if I had to guess, how fast an OC192 line is. But there's 2 of them. There's one here, and then there's one here. And so this is what the venue provides. So what that is the truck showed up. The truck plugs their cables into the patch panel. This is what the patch panel is plugged into. And this is how video might go back and forth between the MLB or NBA or NFL. You know, this is what already is existing. So this is what's there before we even show up. We just plug in, and now video feeds are going back and forth. Another way that we send video back and forth is with, you know, SRT, as Tony was talking about earlier. I believe this is SRT boxes with 4 video inputs and then an IP output, and then 4 video outputs, and then again via IP. This is part of a system called Game Creek Everywhere. Basically, all they need is a good fiber internet connection, and then it creates like a VPN tunnel back to their house or their home net, you know, base. And then these video feeds plug in, and they're, you know, sending video back and forth via IP. We also send video via LiveView. This was a rack box we put in. It only had 1 video input and a network jack, and this was being sent back to, I don't remember where it was going at this point, but basically it was going back via LiveView. And so we use dedicated hardware like we saw before. You can use LiveView. Here's those SRT boxes. This is a smaller form. This is the one I've actually used. This was the SRT video feed for the Twitter feed we were working on. And so basically you plugged our video feeds into this jack over the internet, public internet. We used SRT to send our feeds back to the Twitter. Live feed for TNT, I think it was. I forget who owns. Yeah. So basically, yeah, we use LiveView, we use SRT, custom boxes like you saw before. There we go with Bob. Bob says, OC3 is 155, OC12 is up to 9953, and STM4 is 60. Yeah, so there was a 10 gig connection. I figured it was 10 gig. I just wasn't sure. But yeah, I mean, they're using, I mean, that box had 8 video feeds going back and forth. I mean, so 8 video feeds at 1.5 gigs a second. That'd be 10 gigs. And the tried and true way of doing transmission, other than the internet, is satellite. And here you see a big C-band satellite dish on the back of a truck, and a very custom-built truck at that. So this is designed to send multiple video paths down one transponder up on a satellite. And so this is a big C-band truck. Here we have 2, I guess they could be C-band, they're probably KU band feeds. This is that redundancy I was talking about. This is 2 different SAT trucks at the same venue, plugged into the same truck, either sending and or receiving feeds. This happened to be game day at Ohio State University. So this was the game day broadcast itself, where it's using these 2 trucks to either send and or receive satellite feeds It probably had internet backup as well, but they had redundant satellite, so I think that's pretty cool. This was at another Ohio State Michigan game. Here you can see the big dish. This is taken from the looking down on the truck. This is C-band as well, but this is a different kind of dish. The sides actually fold in, so that dish folds into basically it's three parts, and it folds in on itself and then folds down. It takes an operator. I feel like he said like an hour to build that dish. So you're not moving very quick. There's some setup involved for sure. And then to the left of the big dish, you see another dish. That's a KU feed for one of the affiliates that was there. I don't remember who it was for, but basically the dish on the left is KU, which is like 14 gigahertz up and like 11 gigahertz down. C-band is 6 up, and then 3 or 4 down. So you have 3 gigahertz versus 11 gigahertz, and the dish size reflects that. So now we talked about transmission. Let's talk about the trucks and the innards of the truck. On the side of the truck, you have what are called clamshells. And these are doors that you can open up to get to the back of the racks, because the racks are pushed up against the wall to maximize floor space. You have to have these clamshells to access the back of the racks. And then in the left-hand corner, where you see that cable coming out of that little hole, we call it a mouse hole, that is designed to go into like a certain room and be allowed, plug certain things into a certain room or whatever it is. There's mouse holes all around the truck. I had never climbed on a clamshell until February. This is a picture of what it looks like from up top. You basically have these doors that fold out, and you got to stand on these little things, and basically if it's icy or slippery, it's not fun. And then those clamshells open up above you too, and you got to kind of duck down to open up those doors. So it was definitely not fun to walk around on them. I mean, but I did it, and I'm sure as I do it more often, I'll become more comfortable. So behind those clamshell doors are a bunch of cables, and I'm sure this was perfectly organized when it was put together in the first place. But as time goes on and things get swapped out and changed around, some of the wires get messy. And here you see basically the back of some replay machines. I can tell that because the multiple cards of different colors. So you have green and blue, or the back of, on that middle, that third row from the left, those are replay machines. And I believe those replay machines can do 8 inputs and 4 outputs. I'm not mistaken. And then here we have, I took this picture too because the decimators, those red things that are on the back, those are decimators. Those are the greatest HDMI to SDI, or SDI to other format SDI distribution amps ever. I mean, those things are solid. You can hammer a nail with them. They convert video. They convert HDMI to SDI. The decimators are awesome. The company is pretty rock solid, in my opinion. If you don't know what decimators are, go look them up, because they are awesome. And then on the left-hand side, I believe you can see those Geffen boxes. I think those are scan converters. I was thinking they're KVMs, but they're scan converters. Here's some nicer wiring. This is in the back of the routers. Now, we'll get to routers in a second, but I just wanted to show you that the wiring can look really nice. It just depends on what bay you're in and how it gets moved around. But this is just some of the wiring that goes into these trucks. Again, here's more wiring, more replay machines, and things get swapped out for different remotes. On this remote, we had to put in 3 or 4 different machines, and so we had to open up the sides, plug them in, make them work, and then we pulled them back out when everything was over. So nothing is permanent in these trucks, that's for sure. Yeah, Bob, you have a good point. You can kind of gauge the gauge the age of the truck because yeah, it depends on if it's pristine and everything's perfect. It probably just was at the shop. If it's been out on the road for a while, probably not so perfect. So here's what a camera looks like. In this case, this is a um, Sony camera. They also have Grass Valley mixed cameras. Most are either Sony or Grass Valley. Um, Excuse me for a second. I gotta mute my mic. Sorry about that. It's been talking for an hour and 20 minutes, and I'm not even through my slideshow yet. Um, Hopefully you're enjoying this. Because we'll just keep going. So here is what you can see that lens. So this is a Digisuper 86. This is a pretty heavy lens. This is what I was talking about earlier, Bob, when I mentioned the heavy part. The lens that's all glass. That's some very expensive glass. One of the events I was on, the previous night, the camera operator had dropped that lens, and while it still worked, the engineer was not happy because he said, and I quote, "That lens cost more than my house." So I don't know what they cost per se, but basically the guy was explaining that it cost more than his house. And it's very heavy, so you don't want to drop it. It's very, very important glass because this is what allows the camera operator to zoom all the way in from the press box and read the blades of grass on the ground. I mean, this thing is super zoom. So this camera is up in the press box, and there's multiple cameras like this on a big production. There's probably at least 3, I'm going to guess, on most productions, if not 4, maybe even 5, depending upon what they're doing. In this production, we had, I believe, 5 of these in this particular event because this was a Tuesday night football game in prime time on ESPN, I believe, or ESPN2. And so I believe there was 5 of these cameras like this. Oh yeah, and so as Eric points out, all optical, that's for sure. No digital zooms on this. Not your cell phone. you know, Definitely no digital. Oh, Bob says B&H will sell you one for 190,000. Yep, see? More than my house, like I was saying. In 4K, yeah. So, when I said that the lenses were the most expensive part of the whole truck, now you see why. So, we have cameras that we bring in on these remotes. We also might have, video from other trucks or other, the venue might provide us a feed. Or we might send video out to somebody. In this case, we would use these. These are called Aja FS1s or 2s, or in this case, there's an Aja 4 in there. These are video proc amps. Allows you to change the video chrominance, the luminance, the scan rate, the format. It allows you to change the audio. You can mute channels. You can change the lip sync. These things are amazing. If you have never used an Aja FS1 or 2 or 4, go look it up. It's pretty cool. They're not that expensive. At least the Aja ones aren't that expensive, relatively speaking. But basically, this does what the Decimator does on steroids. So we use these. These are where actually in the truck, the audio board and video feeds, the audio feed and the video come together. And so this is where it actually combines the video and audio together into one feed and then adjusts the timing so that it's accurate. So these are what do that in the truck. You also have cameras on cool little vehicles. This is this little thing rides back and forth on the sidelines, and that can actually raise the camera up in the air, and it's driven by an operator on the left hand side. You can see the little seat and the wheel, and then this thing will have this is what they call like the cart cam. I'm not sure what the actual name of the unit itself is called. I forget right now. But basically, this is like the cart cam, and um, this thing goes back and forth. And again, this will have a whole crew of people. This might have 3 or 4 people with it just to help pull cables so that no one trips on it. So you have the camera operator, you have the driver, then you might have 3 or 4 what they call grips who will help make sure the cable doesn't get snagged and doesn't trip over anybody. So here's 5 people just for one camera. Thank you, Tommy. Chapman. I couldn't remember the name. I blanked there, but yeah, it's Chapman Crane. Sorry about that. So yeah, so this is a Chapman crane, and this vehicle arrives on a guy brings it. It's a special unit. Although some of the bigger trucks will actually travel with one, that's kind of rare. So you have the cameras up top, you have a camera down below, you have video feeds to and from the venue. The cameras plug into these, which are camera control units. This is what actually takes the video feed from the camera and breaks it out into different video feeds, like the camera feed, the intercom, tally. This will also provide return feeds because so the camera operators can actually push a button and see the return feed. So for example, the director could say, hey, camera 1, make your shot match camera 2's. You push a button, now you see what camera 2's feed is. You can then match the feed. So all that video, the video feeds to and from the camera, audio feeds to and from the camera, tally feed, camera control, all go across that Triax cable or the SMPTE cable and come to these, which are actually the camera control units. And then here's another form of them. So this is a Grass Valley camera, control unit. Here's like 8 of them, or 10 of them, I should say. Here's different kind of Grass Valley cameras. So you have these units, you have these type of units. Then you also have, we call them sleds, and basically they're fiber to Triax converters. So this is back at that Twitter feed where you saw the yellow fiber earlier. We ran fiber from our truck to that patch panel in the trailer, and then inside the venue, we went from fiber back to Triax and got power from the venue inside because we couldn't send coax, the whatever it was, 2,000 feet, 3,000 feet inside. We sent fiber inside and then used the green boxes, which are called sleds, to convert fiber into Triax with that embedded power. So there was still only one cable going to the camera, and we could still control it over fiber. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's go back to the chat real quick, take a break. Oops. Yeah, so it's $200,000 for a zoom lens. Yeah, B&H, already saw that. Who runs IFB? We'll get to that. Audio, I believe, is next, if I'm not mistaken, in my slideshow. Yeah, an FS1 is 34. That sounds expensive, but maybe they went up. But they're great units. I mean, decimators on steroids, definitely. Yeah, I've seen some pictures and videos where lenses do get taken out, and before you ask, I don't know who pays for that. I've often asked, like, hey, if the baseball hits the lens, who pays for that? I believe it's the production, or not the production company. I believe it's the people who booked the, so like the TV, the CBS or NBC, I believe pays for that. But I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. I mean, insurance might pay, but I don't know that for a fact. I always forget. Yeah, Eric says no wireless. There are wireless cameras. We do use them, or people do use them, but it's not that often. Wireless is still kind of spotty at best in a lot of places because everything's RF these days. I mean, you got cell phones and IFB, wireless IFB, and wireless mics, and who knows what. So I mean, There's wireless cameras, but I definitely you don't see them all that often. At least you see a couple of them. You don't see a lot of them. Speaking of wireless, how do they get those wireless shots in the field like after a championship game where they're I believe those units are like 6 pass, kind of like live view on steroids with a local, if I'm not mistaken. Um, I'm not sure. What they use honestly. I know our video pass we use the ones we use in the university are have 5 antennas on them and are therefore are like dual. Oh, I'm trying to think what they call diversity. They're use diversity antenna systems, so they break the signal up and it chooses the best one, and then kind of goes back and forth. That's how I know ours works. And ours we got works pretty good. I don't know if I have a picture of it, but it basically works pretty good. I mean, it's not the best, but for the venues we're in, rock solid. Basketball arena works great. Co-FDM, which is what they use, is pretty cool. It's a bunch of individual carriers. So if you lose, imagine there's 30 carriers, if you lose these, well, you still got, this much left. So you can still get data through. So it's kind of like live view, only over RF instead of cellular, if that makes any sense. Bob says insurance. I think that's probably got a part of it, but I feel like I remember hearing that there was an expense list, and so anything that gets broke gets put on the expense list, and then I think they split it. Maybe I probably shouldn't speak to that. I'm not 100% sure how that works, but yeah, it basically can get awfully expensive. So Joe was asking about IFB and audio. I believe audio is next on our list. So let's go back to the slideshow, and yeah, we use a bunch of Blackmagic and Aja converters. I believe we had like 30 of them on this event, if I'm not mistaken. They just brought me this whole bin, and I opened it up, and it was just full of Blackmagic and Aja converters. I prefer the Aja. They have proven to be much more reliable to me than Blackmagic gear, but in this case, it was a temporary setup, so it probably worked no matter what. But the Aja Fidos have never failed me once, so I would prefer the Aja Fidos. FIDO if you're looking to do some SDI over fiber. Here's a custom built box. Basically, they converted BNC cables and some other things to fiber. This was in a little little blue box they throw down on the field, or like at a basketball arena. And this is all home built from what I remember. Like a company makes these, and you basically can buy it. You plug the video feed in, you plug power in, you get your video, you get your intercom. Sorry, yeah. You have fiber on the left. Then I believe you have power coming in on the left. You have BNC on the right for your video feeds, and then you have, I don't know what this other XLR is. Maybe audio? Probably audio. So this is just some of the custom gear they make for events like this. The other thing we used was this cool unit, which from JFS, Joseph Electronics. This is a modular SDI to fiber system. So in this case, we have 8 transmit feeds and 6 receive feeds. I believe all down one fiber, if not 2 fibers. I don't remember exactly the back of this unit, but basically it's modular. So if you want to all transmit, you just buy the transmit modules and slide them in. If you want receive, you slide them in. And this was how he converted video feeds that were going to and from the arena over fiber. So then the camera control units, or camera power supplies you saw earlier, this is the camera control units. This is where video people sit, or V1, V2, that's what they're called. They sit and use these control units to adjust the color of the camera, the brightness, the luminance, all that stuff. Those are the same things. But basically the black levels and the white levels, and what basically we call them coloring the camera. This is who sets the color of the camera. So the camera operator points the camera at what they want to see, but the video operator back in the truck is actually what is making that camera look a certain way. And this is done so that every camera looks the same way. So when you cut between camera 1 or camera 6, the colors don't change, the black levels are the same, they're the same brightness. The operators aren't doing that. The camera operators are just pointing the camera at the object and following the player or the ball or whatever it is. The video operator in the back is actually adjusting the iris and the white level and the black level and the color information. So you actually have video operators who read those scopes that Joe was talking about earlier. They sit there and read the scope and then adjust the colors accordingly. I've heard a story about how a certain venue or certain sports team wanted a certain colored look, so the video operators had to actually adjust the cameras to have that certain warmth color, you know, basically more beige than you would typically see, because he wanted it to look warm. He wanted the things to look like they were warmer or more homey, I guess. I'm not sure why he wanted it that color, but he was the owner of the team, and so he could ask for whatever color he wanted. These pictures got a lot of order. But basically, here you see that camera I showed you earlier, and this is in the booth. So here you have the telestrator. This is where they, can draw on the screen and highlight players. Here you also see one of the IFB/talkback mic boxes we use. And here you can see cabling just kind of taped up and temporary because it doesn't stay. Here you see the booth kit. This is where you have several different intercoms for, stats. There's a stat coordinator. There is a, that 2 is probably for play-by-play person or the color commentator. There's another box on the right, so it's probably for the main play-by-play caller. There's a spare headset. There's a floor director's headset. And then here you see two different video feeds. One probably has stats of the game, and then one has, a return feed, or what you see at home, or it might be an isolated feed where the producer can decide what to show the, commentators. Like, hey, I want to show this certain person, or I want to show a certain graphic. There's a special line called an ISO feed where the truck can decide what the booth actually sees. And so there's a monitor for that. Joe says, is that camera? Yeah, well, the window has actually been removed. I believe we actually removed the window itself so that the camera wasn't shooting through glass. If I'm not mistaken. We either slid it over or we removed it. I can't remember. I wasn't there for this when this got put in, but I was up here later taking these photos. The blue box earlier, Joe, is just basically a BNC or video feed to fiber adapter. It's a very basic version of a sled, I guess, because it's just a converter, but it's in a nice ruggedized case, because it's out on the court or out, near the field, and so it's just in a nice rubberized case so it doesn't get damaged. And then the connectors, are getting unplugged and plugged in every day. So in order to avoid wear and tear on the actual unit itself, they put them in those blue boxes so that you're not actually touching the connectors on the device itself. You're touching connectors on the box, which can be easily replaced in the field. So that's why blue boxes exist. Hopefully that answers your question. So Tommy says, Black Magic converters run hot. I do believe they do, yes. Joe, why do we not like Black Magic? It's redundant. It's reliability. That's what it comes down to. Reliability. Black Magic has never proven to be a device that can run 24/7 without any issues. At least that's been my experience. Whenever I've tried to use Black Magic at the TV station, I usually get bit. It's happened multiple times where a device that works, that in theory should just keep working, doesn't. And you can't have that in professional television because there's too much money on the line. So if Aja sells the same device that costs $300 more, we're going to buy the Aja one because it's going to work. Blackmagic gear just is not as reliable as I wish it was. I really do wish it was better. It's just not for the level of stuff that we do. Um, it's bit me way too many times, so I'm probably not alone in that thought process that it doesn't work reliably. Now, for a small, medium production size, we're talking about those 3 different sizes. For a small production where you power up for a couple hours, do a game, and go home, they're probably great. I mean, we do have some of those devices. We do use them for things like that, for a simple live shot, for a simple parade, where we're not asking them to run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So, hopefully that answers your question about Blackmagic. Yeah, I am power. You could do power over Ethernet. Might be a similar application where you bring power in, bring Ethernet, and then it PoE injects it or whatever. Might be one of the situations we're referring to. We already answered that question, and I just answered your question. Hopefully, programming is kind of one of those things too. Those dip switches aren't always the easiest things to use. The decimator software where you just can install it on a computer and you point and click and make the changes via GUI. Very handy. I wish more Blackmagic products had a GUI. That would definitely be helpful. The Aja FS1s have beautiful web pages where you can change every parameter on the front or on it, but they also have a scroll menu where you can change every parameter in the front of the unit on the front of the unit. So you can either do it via the front panel or you can do it via the web page. In a truck environment, that's great because if I want to go change something real quick, I can just go up to it and change it, or I can log into a web page and do fine adjustments if I need to. So that's why I prefer Aja gear. But if you're doing a simple little wedding or baseball game for your high school, Blackmagic gear works too. It's nothing wrong with it. It just has that threshold. And I think I said this earlier, but maybe I didn't. When you're doing a small production, you can have a certain amount of risk. When you got a medium production, you have less risk. When you do a large production, you take no risk. I mean, you do, but you try not to. Things don't scale. I always say it to people, you want to do a vMix broadcast and have your 4 cameras or 5 cameras, great. You want to use NDI or, if you want to use NDI on I'm going to build an NDI production trailer, great. It's not going to scale. It's going to be able to do your 5 camera shoot. It's not going to do your 1,000 camera shoot. Not 1,000, 100 camera shoot or whatever. It doesn't scale because it's not designed to scale, because the amount of data that you need to run an NDI feed or feeds is going to be crazy. Now, we do have video over IP standards, but they're designed in a certain way that can be controlled remotely, whereas NDI, you set it on the end devices, you don't have a controller. So again, the small stuff designed for small productions doesn't often scale to the larger productions like you might think it should or would. Hopefully that answers your question. Haley was actually here earlier. She has since left. She'll be back later, but she was here earlier. So let's go back. I think I have a couple more slides left. So yeah, this is the telestrator. I think I showed you this earlier. This was the audio, booth kit. Basically, we have this as an A2. One of the things I do as an A2 is either set up the on-camera mics or the booth. This is what the booth looks like. One of the things we use, I mentioned earlier, is that DT12. It's 12 XLR cables in one connector. In this photo, you see it come in on the left-hand side in that green tape. The connector screws on to this breakout box. Then you can just plug individual XLR cables in, and then allows you to run one cable up to the booth, and then break it out into whatever you need to run, whatever you need it to be, whether it's IFB, intercom, microphones, whatever. Hey, David. Well, thank you for staying up till 5 a.m. in the morning or waking up early. I'm not quite sure, but I do appreciate you being here all the way from Europe. You are my first ever Europe viewer that I'm aware of, so I appreciate you, David. So this is a DT12 breakout box. One of the things the A2 is also responsible for is the parabs. These are the microphones that we use in football games to get the quarterback, saying hike. There are usually 4 of these. They are placed on the 20-yard lines on each side, so 2 on one side, 2 on the other side. In this case, they're wireless, which I appreciate because otherwise you got to run cables to each one. But basically, this allows the audio to be focused into that microphone. And as the A2, your job is to build these and assemble these, and then make sure the operators know how to use them, and to make sure the batteries are changed and that they are working. I've had these things die during a game before. You got to go over and check it out. So this is a parab. Part of the audio is set up for the game. So speaking of audio, this is a small audio board. This is a Yamaha. This was in one of the trucks I showed you earlier. This is what I would call a medium audio board. There are smaller ones. There are also larger ones. This is a larger one. This is a Calrec Sigma board. And then you have another Calrec board. I don't remember the model number of this thing, but this is like all digital. Multiple layers of audio, faders, and I don't remember what the exact specs on this audio board are, but actually I could tell you that. So I believe in this truck, this is a Calrec digital audio board. I think it's got 96 faders. Does that make sense? 96 microphone inputs, 256 by 256 channels of MADI audio, 64 Dante audio channels, 120 channels of audio processing, 16 stereo outputs, 48 stereo groups, 20 mono buses, multi-track recording, GPIO inputs and outputs. These boards are insane. This is definitely the large scale audio boards. Oops. Why is my audio coming up? Large. That's weird. Joe, that actually really depends. I have seen, video operators make $700 a day. I've seen audio operators make $500 a day. I've seen it as low as $350 a day. That was the lowest I've ever seen it for an audio operator, at least for an A2. Sorry, an A2 made $350 a day. I've seen audio for $500. I've seen replay for $500. I think it was. I've seen a V1 position pay $700 a day. And a day is $10 per day. So then you factor in overtime as well. So pretty lucrative. If you want to travel, you can make some serious money doing this stuff because they pay pretty well. Eric says they may be conky, but they're magical. Yes, DT12s are awesome. I've never had to fix one though, but I'm pretty sure it's not fun. But yes, DT12s make it so much easier, especially because you have different kind of boxes where you can actually do feed throughs. So you can take a DT12 and plug it into one box and then feed it through to the other box. So you can use 5 connectors off the first box and 5 off the second box, but you're still running one cable. So DT12 is cool, especially when it comes to the audio, where you might need to actually use the power to power, intercom boxes. So therefore you need copper. DT12 is pretty cool. Heavy, but cool. And yeah, Joe, I left this picture up just for you so you can keep drooling on it. I doubt you're going to find a price for this online, but you might be able to. All right, so let's keep going. I think I'm almost done. Okay, so we talked about video, we talked about audio. Now we're into the heart of the truck. This is the rack room on one of the trucks. This is patch panels. Here you see a video router on the left side, and then the K-frame switcher in the middle. So the trucks have a router and the trucks have a switcher. The router is basically where all the video feeds come in and out of. On a truck like this, you may have, let me look it up. So on a truck like this, I don't know what this truck's router frame is. I guess it's not this big, but you may have 396 inputs with 770 outputs. I think I have a picture of one of those. You may have 1,052 audio inputs or video or audio outputs all come to that router. So those routers get huge. This is a smaller one. The switcher is the same thing. You might have 96 video inputs or 128 video inputs going to that switcher with maybe 64 coming out of it. And so there's a lot of video in these trucks. I mean, more so than my TV station. So this is what I might say is the lower end of the trucks. Then you have, you know, a router like this. This is a company called Evertz. This is the EQX line. Then you might have this thing, which is Envision. This one, for in fact, is 396 inputs, 770 outputs. That includes 992 audio inputs, 1,184 outputs, 12 ports in of MADI, 12 outputs of MADI, along with 32 analog inputs and 64 analog outputs. So this has got all kinds of inputs, all kinds of outputs, and it allows you to mix and match signals. So it can take these inputs and these outputs or these different inputs and make one new output based on maybe different video and audio. So that's a big, big router. I'm gonna try to wrap this up here soon. This is a switcher. This is a Grass Valley K-frame switcher. This probably has, let me look it up. This is a 9ME 96 input, 46 output switcher with 6 keyers per ME. And then it has a bunch of DVEs inside and still stores and stuff like that. So big switcher. This is what the TD runs. So when I said technical director earlier, this is what the TD runs. This is another K-frame switcher. This is the one I actually just showed you a picture of. I don't know why I took 2 shots of it. Here's a replay controller. All these trucks have replays. So this is a Grass Valley replay controller. Then you also have EVS units. Here you see an EVS unit with its screen on the left, and you see an EVS unit and its screen on the right. This is what replay looks like. There's 2 rows of this. Usually there's 2 rows of replay in every truck. Here's what the EVS machines actually look like. Again, usually with like 8 inputs, 4 outputs, or customizable in some form or fashion of 8 in, 8 out, 4 in, 4 out, something like that. I just closed chat. Let me go back to the... So there's your replay machines. In terms of network, everything has a network connection. So you see a bunch of Netgear switches in this picture. Other people use FS gear, Cisco gear is seen in a lot of places. Just depends on the truck, but everything's got a network connection. In this case, we had to use 10 gig from. We had to use the throwdown switch. We had to get 10 gig in, and then use 3 1 gig connections out to feed something. So we had this little Netgear switch, which had, was it 12 10 gig connections and 12 1 gig connections. Pretty cool switch. But we just threw that down and plugged it in, and then when we were done, we gave it back. This picture is from Facebook. This is NEP's all IP based truck. I would suggest you freeze the video and look at this because there's so much going on in this thing. But basically, you have an Arista switch, which is the main core of the IP-based truck, and then all those other modules you see in the bottom rows are basically your AP or IP to SDI bridges. I don't know anything about these things because I've never actually used any of this stuff, but I just thought this picture was really, really cool. So again, I suggest you pause the video or whatever and take a look at this one. Haley's back, Joe, in case you were wondering. Joe's asking where you were. Oh, here she comes, Joe.
Ta-da! I can't see anybody though.
They're over here. They're over here. The chat's slightly behind, so I'm sure
Hi, Joe.
Joe will say hi in a second.
Hi, Bob. I know Bob.
Yeah.
Hi, Tommy, that I don't know, and Eric, and QuickTech.
Well, QuickTech is Tony.
Is that Tony?
Yeah,
Okay,
so.
hi, Tony. David.
I had a guy from Central Europe.
Ooh. Have fun, nerd.
Oh, Joe says hi. He just said it.
I heard you talking about me.
Yeah.
Talked about something that was heavy, complicated, and something else. I'm like, hey, hold out.
Tony says hi too.
Hi, Tony.
So where was I? Yeah. So I suggest this picture is just really cool, and yeah, I wish I knew more about it. Excuse me. Sorry, let me go back to the chat. I'm behind. So are TDs and directors paid more? Most likely, yes. Directors are probably the highest paid people, followed by your TDs, followed by your A1, your V1, and then your, V2s and A2s. Go on down from there. But yes, I'm pretty sure the TDs and directors are the highest paid. Yeah, Eric, Grass Valley for the win. Grass Valley is very popular. Belden, I think, did Belden buy them? No. Yeah, I can't remember. But Grass Valley makes a lot of products that are used. The more expensive the device, the more they look like Sub-Zero fridges. I don't know what that's in reference to, Bob. Oh. See you, Bob. So, all right. So now we're back up on chat. Let me go back. I'm almost done. I think I got one or two more slides. So this is the the inside of the production truck. This is where in the center there is where the director sits. To the left of him is the producer. To the right of him is the TD. The back row is your production assistant, or sorry, your like associate producers or graphics people or score bug operators. It depends on the production. In this case, the backup row was other producers, like social media producers. Hopefully you can see that, yeah. So this was the event that I worked on in February. You can see in this shot, this is a baseball game I worked on. Here you have the director and TD in the front row. You have associate director in the back with keeping track of breaks and counting down commercial breaks and talking to the control room, or the master control room. And then in this, I had this little video I wanted to show you, just kind of all the different monitors changing. You can see the video, what all's changing during a break, or during, and this was going to break, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So let me show you that again, just because I think it's kind of cool. Here you can see the director's calling out cues, using hand signals to trigger when to go, and then all the different monitors changing. So they keep track of it. It's kind of hard to follow when you're not used to it, but definitely a lot going on. This is, I believe, is this ESPN? No, this was the Final Four. This is just a cool shot I found on Facebook. Shows you another control room. This is on the big trucks where the whole, like this is like Super Bowl truck, where you have basically one truck just for the control room. This is that kind of truck where this whole front row just keeps going and going and going. And actually, Joe, I should send you the link. I mean, I can find it. Gerling just did a video of Game Creek's truck where they have a snack bar in the control room. Maybe I'll find that in a second. So power. So all this requires power. This is the segment Bob was probably wanting to see, but he unfortunately left. Here's a picture of 4 generators all tied together, synchronized. They were only using 3 of them, but this powered an entire TV compound. So here's the generators. Here is the main distribution point, where they all came together, then broke out to individual transformers. This is the back of that distribution box, where you can see all 4 generators come in at the bottom and plug in. And then, again, the cabling is great, only this time, this is necessary. There's so much power going through those cables that if they were to be coiled up on each other or around each other, they could actually arc and cause a fire. There's that much power flowing through those cables. Because when I first started learning how to use trucks, the guy told me to do figure 8s, because otherwise you're generating magnetic fields that literally could cause fires. And it's happened. Kind of crazy. So then, after it left the distribution box, this came over to these transformers that were on carts. In this case, this transformer fed 2 different units, 400 amps apiece. So it fed NCP11 and SS24. Again, 400 amp service to each truck. And there were probably 12 of these transformers around the compound. It was crazy. Oh yeah, couple things. Everything has to be tied together with reference. So these are 2 master clocks that basically generate a signal that every device is then fed, so that the video is all in sync with each other. So there's 2 units. They are operating independently or together, depends. And then there's a changeover switch that basically allows you to change over from one to the other should there be a failure, because every device has to be gen locked together or go through a frame sync and then so it can be gen locked. Otherwise, the pictures wouldn't look right, and so you have these changeover switches. This is pretty cool. This is how we do lip sync. This is what they call a valid generator, and so then it generates a certain signal that, when you run through this box, will tell you if things are lined up. And then here's a picture of the audio timing. In this case, we are perfectly synced. This is channels 9 through 16. If you didn't know, SDI is capable of having 16 channels of audio on one signal. So if you go back a picture, you see channels 1 through 8 on the left, channels 9 through 16 on the right. This thing is used to make sure that everything is perfectly in sync. And if you wasn't, you would use those FS1s or 2s that I showed you earlier to adjust the audio so that everything was in sync when it left the truck. So that big event, the NBA Twitter show, or the NBA show I worked on earlier in February, this is a map of the TV compound as seen from the sky. You can see on this map the fiber trailers down here on the bottom. You can see a bunch of the TV trucks, and then the trailers on the left-hand side. The trailers on the left-hand side are where the offices were for meetings and where the snacks were. In this event, we actually they rented out the Thirsty Parrot restaurant, so we actually went to a real restaurant every day for food instead of having to use cafeteria trailers. Here is a photo I took of that TV compound from the 7th story parking garage next door. I think this is a really cool photo. And then I doctored it up so you can actually see what each truck is. Again, you want to look these trucks up, you can. Almost all these trucks are online with pictures and layouts and stats and stuff. So if you want to look at those, you can. And that's our slideshow. So, any final questions? Let me go back to the chat real quick. I'm sure there are some questions. Tommy says he loves it, loves those snacks. Joe says, Tommy says, gotta have snacks. My wife agrees with you, in case you didn't hear that. Eric says, no doubt, a lot of electromagnetic field interface. Yes, there was. Joe says, is your electrician on site? Actually, there were several. There was a whole group of people who was just there from the generator company. That was their job, was to run the generators to make sure they were running. I wish I had wrote down how much power they were using, but it was insane. I don't remember exactly how much power was running. It was a lot. Let me just put that. I mean, 400 amps per truck. Basically, you could basically assume that the 400 amps per truck, and there were 12 trucks in that picture. I think there was. So truck operators are not allowed to hook up the power themselves at venues. So we show up, we run our cables over to those transformers, but we don't plug them in. So electricians had to come over and plug them in. We're not allowed to plug those in at any venues that I'm aware of. So we ran the power cables over to them. Then we got to let them know we're ready. The electricians walk over. They plug them in. We test, make sure the power is good and clean before we power up the whole truck. I didn't include a picture of that. I probably could have. But basically, there's a big panel. You got meters on it and switches, and you set the switch to be the right input voltage, and then you check to make sure the phases are correct and that everything's good and whatnot, and the right voltage is there, and then you actually power the truck up from there. So, yeah, there's electricians involved for sure. Yep, Tony said, yeah, Tony, there's a whole team. Like I said, there was a fiber team, there was electricians, there was a networking team just for internet, and phone lines. At that scale, there's dedicated people for everything. Tommy says, thank you for the live stream. Joe says, very cool. Glad you enjoyed it. Hello, Adrian. Nice to meet you. I don't think I've seen you here before, but I'm glad you can make it. I truly do appreciate you being here. Tony says, fantastic stream. Thank you, man. Eric says, that's awesome. Thanks you for the show. And yeah, much bigger than ATEMs and YouTube. And that's kind of what I wanted to do the stream, to show you how you can go from those small vMix based trucks or productions to ATEMs and hardware-based all the way up to the big scale. And some things carry over, some things don't. But it just kind of depends. But I have gone, at this point, 2 hours. So I'm going to call it a wrap. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. I'm so glad to see new faces in the stream tonight. I hope to keep this up. If you have topics or suggestions for the next live stream, please let me know in the comments after this video. I greatly appreciate it, and would appreciate any questions or comments and feedback going forward. It helps the algorithm, and it gives me ideas for future streams. If you like this kind of thing, SoCal Broadcaster, this is his shirt actually, is on YouTube. He is a radio engineer in California. He does similar things to what I do. So check him out. It's SoCal Broadcaster. And thank you all for being here. I truly do appreciate it.